Once in a country named Berserk of Gluttony, a man was traveling with his horse on a normal speed range when he was attacked by some goblins. He was so terrified that he had to increase his horse speed, and just at the brink of time, when the goblin caught up with him, an arrow came out of nowhere and sent one of the nearest goblins back. It was a group of soldiers who were on a hunt for goblins. With unwavering determination, these warriors engaged the goblins, their sole intent being to ensure none of the creatures would escape their wrath. The fierce battle raged on, and the goblins were swiftly dispatched. Upon their triumphant return to the city, the victorious warriors gathered to discuss their recent goblin-slaying exploits. Their conversations revolved around their newfound strength and the rewards they had acquired from their hunting endeavors. Among the group, there stood a young boy who was serving as a guard. He overheard their talk but couldn't help but feel inadequate due to his rumbling, empty stomach. Nonetheless, he possessed a valuable skill, and the prospect of securing a job was a blessing in itself for him. Meanwhile, in the same world, there existed a trio of holy knights known as the Berserk siblings. Despite their holy knight status, their behavior did not align with their noble titles. One day, as they strolled down a street, a man accidentally dropped a plate that rolled to the feet of one of the siblings. Rather than demonstrating grace, the trio threatened the man with dire consequences. Fortunately, their leader intervened and showed mercy, sparing the man from harm. As they returned to their home, they encountered Fate, the boy who had overheard the warriors' conversation earlier. Fate, still visibly weakened from hunger, caught their attention. In a cruel display of arrogance, they tossed 5 coins at him, demanding that he pick them up. When Fate complied, his hand was ruthlessly trampled, causing him further pain. The Berserk siblings berated him for embarrassing their family. In this world, a clear divide existed between the privileged haves and the disadvantaged have-nots, distinguished by the special powers granted by the gods known as skills. The trio of siblings continued to mistreat Fate, but at this critical juncture, Roxy Hart intervened. She reminded them of their duty as holy knights to protect the citizens and chastise them for their abusive behavior. Roxy suggested that they could employ the have-nots to stand in for them, highlighting their responsibility to guard the city gates. Eventually, the siblings retreated. Roxy extended a helping hand to Fate, assisting him to his feet and gently tending to his bloodied face. She assured him that he could count on her for support if he ever faced such mistreatment again. Fate went to a canteen and thought about what Lady Roxy had said about telling her anytime something happened, but he came to the conclusion that he didn't need to engage her once more. Someone came up to him just then and inquired as to whether or not he had fallen again. The man warned him that if things continued in that direction, he would wind up suffering from unending torment and painful labor with only one possible outcome, a bad one. He swiftly completed his meal, gave the man his money, and walked out of the restaurant without responding to the man. He reflected on the idea that he ought to have had something valuable bestowed upon him as he made his way back home. He didn't really wish for holy knight power but was okay with being a warrior or even a merchant or craftsman. But there was no changing how things were at that time. When you have nothing, you are trapped as a loser. Just as he walked around a corner, he noticed some thieves and felt that he had to let Lady Roxy know about it. He rushed to the main entrance and informed Lady Roxy about it, who took action immediately while he took over the place for her. She ran inside through the entrance to confront the said thief, but it was a shocking sight for him to see that the thief came out of the entrance instead of Lady Roxy. Full of fear, Fate urged himself to stay intact as the thief approached him, knowing he was trusted to handle the place for her. With a determined mind, he struck the thief with the flagpole he was holding, which helped him defeat the already injured intruder. To his surprise, his gluttony skill was activated, and as he wondered about it, Lady Roxy returned to meet him, asking if he was hurt or all right. She sensed that he looked well, and it was worrying. Fate noticed that he could hear her inner voice, and he could hear all her thoughts. He informed her that she could take credit for everything, despite the fact that she insisted that she needed to report it to her superiors because he was worried that Sir Raphael would find out. He attempted to read her mind again during this time, but it failed this time. When he advised her to take credit, he could tell she wasn't paying attention, so he tried to persuade her more. Then she asked if he would like to work with the Hart family or serve the Berserks until they killed him, reminding him that his future was his own to decide. He contemplated a future where he was treated like trash by the Berserks or a bright one where he could work for Lady Roxy. So he asked her who would replace him if he quit, and she responded that it had been affirmed that it wouldn't be his responsibility, whatever happened thereafter. He felt that if Lady Roxy thought so, then it was probably true, and he accepted her idea. After he left Lady Roxy's side, he checked his stats and was surprised to see that they were already in 3 digits. He wondered how this had happened and what the identity and telepathy that appeared there meant. He recalled the fact that he could read Lady Roxy's mind and wondered if that was the telepathy skill. The activation of gluttony left him curious about what was happening in his body. With stats like that, he felt he might be able to take on monsters. The next day, he set out in search of a sword, visiting a swordsman who asked him for his budget. It was humiliating that he only had 2 coins to his name, earned through hard work. The man told him he couldn't buy anything with such a meager budget. The 2 silver coins were all he had managed to save up. The swordsman then directed him to a barrel of what he called trash weapons near his shop. With determination, Fate decided that it was better to have something than nothing. He randomly picked a sword and identified it, but it had 0 durability and strength. He continued to pick swords one after another until he found one that seemed a bit filthy and had been treated like trash. To his amazement, this sword talked to him. The sword raised itself and revealed itself as a greedy, one-handed sword. It told Fate that it would make his life worthwhile and referred to him as Gluttony. Fate wondered how the sword knew about his gluttony skill, and the sword explained that they had much in common. He decided to buy the sword with his 2 coins. At the Vlurk household, Mimil discussed with Raphael Roxy trying to hire Fate into the Heart household without consulting them. Mimil suggested teaching her a lesson about defying the Vlurk family, but Raphael dismissed the idea, mentioning that there were plenty of replacements for Fate and that it wasn't worth the trouble. Mimil pointed out that Roxy had complained about Thor handling guard duty, and Raphael reminded her that the Hearts and the Vlurks were part of the 5 great families supporting the kingdom, so they shouldn't complicate matters at the moment. Raphael stood up as it was time to head to the military district. Mimil asked him what part of their studies had him so enthusiastic, and he replied that it was the study of how to become immortal. Fate went to a nearby field as directed by the sword, where the Greed Sword congratulated him and expressed happiness at having mastered his name, Faith Graphite. Just then, monsters appeared, and the sword directed him to spar with them. With each monster he killed, his gluttony skill increased in stats, and he received a skill strength boost from the first monster he defeated. After the battle with the goblin monsters, Fate was amazed to see that his skills and stats had increased significantly. He also realized that he hadn't felt hungry, and his stomach hadn't been rumbling since the beginning of that day. Curiously, he asked the Greed Sword about the concept of people having the skills they are born with. The sword explained that normally, skills and stats increase from battles, and experience levels go up accordingly. However, the gluttony skill was different. It stole stats and skills from others at the cost of not benefiting from experience. The sword cautioned him not to reveal the gluttony skill to others, as it was one of the skills that defined the law. When Fate questioned whether he would be required to battle all by himself, the sword reassured him that it was there to help him and that as long as he used it, he would benefit. It confirmed that he was now a skilled swordsman. Despite this, Fate considered heading home, but the sword reminded him to collect the goblin's ears first, as he needed to get paid. With the 38 goblins he had killed, he earned 3 silver and 80 bronze coins. He felt like he could finally get some food to eat, but the sword reminded him to treat the money like a gem, as befitting its name, greed. As Fate walked down the street, he suddenly collapsed near a man who was holding a small girl. The man's stats looked locked when he attempted to scan them. He made the decision to follow the man out of a sense of duty, despite not knowing what the man might be capable of. The man led the girl to a specific location and told her that she should consider herself lucky because otherwise, the Holy Knights would use her as a plaything. Fate found his way to the back of the container and contemplated entering to attack the man. However, the sword cautioned him not to rush into things without knowing the man's stats. Fate was determined to accept responsibility for whatever occurred in spite of the uncertainty, and with his newly acquired abilities, he felt forced to take any action necessary to assist them. We sincerely hope you have liked reading about Fate's exploits in the Berserk of Gluttony universe. What do you think of the narrative thus far? Post your thoughts in the comment section. Remember to subscribe to receive updates on the upcoming spectacular episode if you are new to our channel.